Get the current updates on the Wealthy Wednesday show. Subscribe today. Welcome to the Wealthy Wednesday show. I am your host, Luci McMonagle. Women are recreating the rules for business, leadership, money, and they are changing the world in the process. Each week, join me for empowering messages and interviews that will inspire, motivate, and transform you. Giving a special shout out to Gordon Weary for creating the custom music that you are listening to now. Now, let's get started. Hey, welcome to another edition of the Wealthy Wednesday show. This is your host, Luci McMonagle, and today I want to tell you about some incredible updates that we're having in the mystic conscious creation world. We have an incredible guest, and her name is Johanna Lynn, and she is fascinated by what parents share with their children. And I personally, this has been a fascination of mine too, so we're going to have a lot of fun because it's the invisible stuff that's passed along with the DNA in addition to the stories that the parents tell. And Joanna's superpower is listening like a detective to the facts of your family history. The words that you use to describe your challenges leads her to where she can begin to work offering up freedom, insights, new perceptions, and it lights her up to offer this work to a group and to individuals. So she loves that at the beginning of the day together, she's able to walk with her clients and with individuals who are strangers at the beginning and who become incredibly free individuals at the end. So we're going to get more into this. And if you've been bumping up against that financial glass ceiling, if you keep having these recurring issues over and over again, listen up, because today we're going to give you some tips and some strategies. And also, Joanna's going to give you a free gift at the end of the show. So grab a pen, grab a paper. We are going to have a phenomenal show today. So Joanna, welcome to the Wealthy Wednesday show.
Thanks so much for having me, Luci. It's great to be here with you.
I am so honored that you are on the Wealthy Wednesday show, and your work is so powerful.
Well, thank you. I love it. So it's so nice to hear that.
Thank you. So there's so many different ways that individuals get unblocked or remove the stuff, and we've heard there's hundreds of ways. Could you tell us a little bit on how did you get started in this process on uncovering the hidden stories that we suffer from our DNA, and how do you present that to the world?
Absolutely. Well, I think I came across this, as many people find what they do and what they love, is it provided so much results in my life and for me. And so I thought, wow, this is transformational. And I really wanted to bring it out there into the world and to the clients that I serve. I had a background for years in clinical hypnotherapy, and this just blended so well in working with sort of that unconscious, I call it the invisible force that guides all of our life from behind. Chromosomally, biologically, we're half our mom and we're half our dad. And those relationships, or how we carry their experiences, inform our lives so much more than we ever realized.
Oh, absolutely. And then you also work on helping individuals to really get through their money blocks.
Definitely. It's a real focus because I think for so many of us, well, it's so important, it ranks right up there with oxygen.
Yes.
And yet it's a taboo topic. People don't really want to talk about the reality of what's going on. We keep the face, we sort of keep up with the neighbors, so to speak, even if that means we're swimming in debt or we're kept up late at night, thinking or worrying about things. And so providing I guess, a clear path for people to either do the work they love or live worry-free and have a lot more easeful, free life. It's just so very rewarding. And I think it surprises my clients so much. They come in thinking it's all going to be about money, but money is really sort of like the symptom. And when we track it back, we actually see what it's really about. And often the roots of that live inside of our family relationships.
Wow, and that is so incredibly true. And
Mm.
a lot of the work that I've done personally has really starting to undig those family roots. But the way you handle it, the way that you interpret it is a lot different. And you also work on the stories that mom and dad had, or the experiences that mom and dad had with money, or maybe you grew up in a family, not you personally, but maybe one of the audiences may have grown up where one of those members were missing. So we
Yeah.
had to fill in the blanks and just use what was in our DNA. So can you tell us a little bit on how does that experience that our parents had
Yeah.
actually affect us, and what can we do about it?
Absolutely. That's really where the rubber meets the road. Okay, I've got this. I have an awareness of it, but what the heck do I do? So let's start with how it happens in the first place. So when a trauma happens, from even with our grandparents or our parents, what's so exciting is that science can now prove this. We know without a doubt exactly what happens, and we know it can be carried through 2 generations back. So if a trauma happens, let's say our grandfather loses everything, or our father is gambling, or our parents get robbed, and sort of the rug gets pulled out from under us, well, a chemical change happens in the body, and it then imprints the DNA. This is now carried over as the generations continue. So what happened to our grandfather, let's say something like he was in a war-torn situation, and he comes home, of course, exceptionally changed. But how could we, his granddaughter, let's say, if we follow that story, be affected? Well, it lives inside of us in strange ways. Maybe we're out there grocery shopping, filling our cart with everything we could imagine, just in case everything's taken away at a moment's notice. Or we live with this hypervigilance in our body. Maybe we live in upstate Connecticut where everything's provided for, it's quite safe, it's quite beautiful, and yet every little sound, we have a charge, and we kind of, our shoulders reach up to our ears, and we fear for our lives. Because it's really an interesting, I guess, way that the body works. It's as if we're born prepared to deal with what our grandparents or parents were up against. So it's as if the organism says, here you go. Let's add to your intelligence. Let's make sure you've got everything you need to deal with what your family was up against. But we know, even if there wasn't anything as incredible as wartime, we know our grandparents lived a very different experience than we live today. So even in that aspect, we're sort of reliving or going through an experience emotionally that isn't necessarily matched to today. And then that secret question, what on earth do we do with it? And a lot of times, to be honest with you, it depends on what the client is bringing forward. And so the resolution is often very personalized and matched to that experience. So let's use the war example of the grandfather. And let's say I'm working now with the grandson, and he's anxious and he's worried about losing everything, and he just doesn't know where it comes from because it often doesn't match to what's happening. Maybe the grandson is fully employed, happily married. As I say, they live in a very safe community. Well, what on earth do we do with that? A lot of times it's beginning an inner dialogue with the grandfather to begin to say to him, Grandpa, look at what happens to me when I carry what's yours. When I try to deal with the stress and the staying safe and the being protected like you must have felt on the battlefields. And Grandpa, I know you want me to be prosperous and feel safe and feel sort of balanced and at peace in my body. I know this is not what you'd want for me. So it's literally having a real-time conversation, even if grandpa has passed. You know, there are many people where their parents are still here, but the connection is very distant. They couldn't ever imagine having such a conversation. But what's amazing and what we learn in neuroplasticity is the brain, it doesn't matter about the source. So we can bring it into our inner image, we bring it into our imagination. All of the same emotions begin to shift and change. And it's exceptional. You know, we go back into our lives sort of thinking, oh, you know, that's a load off. And then we interact with our money differently, our relationships differently, life in general. We sort of free ourselves from the past that binds.
Wow. And that, for me, that really hits home because my grandparents had to leave a war-torn country that's changed 3 different names. I mean, when you look at the naturalization pictures, there's 3 different countries because the country they're from, was changing. And so when you're saying that, that almost brought tears to my eyes because I'm like, wow. Now, and that just shift your perception, looking at look at how my body's responding to being prepared to the genocide that was going on with my grandparents' heir.
That's it.
Wow. That is really powerful. And if anybody's driving and if you're starting to get a little teary, please find an exit. We want to make sure you're safe.
That's it. This work just brings up all kinds of stuff. You know, the body's getting ready to be complete with it. For the story to be over.
That's so true. And could you tell us a little bit that now we let's say we've already found the cause, the grandparents and or our parents, and we're starting that inner dialogue, but all of a sudden we're starting to have these emotions and stuff come up. How do those emotions affect our relationship with money or in other areas of our life?
It's a very good question because emotions they're such a driver, aren't they? They shape
Yes.
our thoughts, what we feel confident to go for or not. It's really a key piece. And
Yes.
so a lot of times I tend to describe it like a backpack. You know, we've got this backpack full of things we remember, like an argument we had last year, or things we don't consciously remember, but our body keeps the record of. So we're all walking around with these backpacks. And this work is a lot like taking, brick by brick out of that backpack so that we're a lot more emotionally free. So that maybe a trigger used to be, we get the credit card bill and we think, oh my gosh, how am I going to cover this? Or did I really spend that much on whatever it is? And we have the anxiousness that comes up and we come into that loop of never enough thinking. Once we've done enough of this work, it's as if the trigger can be taken out. So we think, okay, here's the credit card bill. And oftentimes we're in this place where there isn't a surprise around how much we've spent because we have more of a direct relationship of that flow of money because we've stepped out of that never enough kind of thinking. And so it gives us a lot more of our own connection to self. So that the emotions aren't running us, but we're much more sort of settled inside of our body. We're much more rooted into, what we're creating, what's important to us.
Wow. And that's really important, to be more rooted and to be more grounded and present in this moment. And you mentioned the work. Can you explain a little bit more about what exactly is the work? And so that if somebody who's just introduced to you, how would you explain that to somebody if they were trying to explain it to somebody else?
It's such an important question, and this work is so experiential. So sometimes it can be difficult to describe, but the best way that I can relay it to you is really none of us get to be the way we are by accident. And as we begin to broaden the picture of, what some of mom's history and what some of dad's history, because that family story, it's our story. It lives on in us in every single way. And so the work looks like getting some of the family facts. And I think that's the main way my work is quite different, because it's not about, how do you feel about that, or tell me your story about this experience. It's very direct and precise, actually. I ask very specific questions, so we get right to the heart of the matter. And things like, did your parents stay together? If they separated, how old were you? Or were you the youngest or the oldest child? One of my favorite questions is, tell me about your mom. Is she warm and loving? Is she cold and critical? As you answer these very specific questions, it gives me almost like a map to your inner world. And I know exactly the work we need to do that's related to that inner blueprint that you have with money. So a session can look like gathering of these family facts, and then beginning either some of that inner dialogue example, like we talked about with Grandpa, or we begin to step into experiences like our own relationship with ourselves. I mean, that can be a real pothole for many of us. We trip into that same space over and over again. Or beginning to create an understanding of, if money were standing right in front of me, since this conversation is about money, how do I feel? And you'd be so surprised people's responses. They either want to lean in and get more of it, or they turn their back in fear, or they're completely overwhelmed. So right away, within a minute or two, we get so much information about how the body holds either our relationship to money, our relationship with our mom. We just usually don't look at things in this way. So this work is a lot about guiding us to a new way of looking at things that are shaping our lives anyway.
Wow. Wow. That is such a unique process on really looking at how to clear those money stories and how to move forward so that you have a stronger identification with yourself, with your family, with how you can choose through using certain tools that you actually help your clients through, on whether or not we want to keep those stories, or if we want to, like you were mentioning earlier, where, hey, Grandpa, I know that that's not what you meant for us to have.
That's it.
And to start rewriting a new story for your future generations. So I'm assuming that, let's say you and I have a session, or 3 or 4 sessions, or however long it takes, and then I decide, oh wow, so I've cleared these issues. My chemicals have changed inside of me.
That's right.
And then that would, if I would have offsprings, it would change the DNA structure in them. Is that correct?
I'm so glad you bring this up, because the work we do for ourselves transforms what our children carry. So what's unresolved in us absolutely gets passed down to our children. It's kind of like the domino effect. And, as you were sharing a little earlier, I thought to mention to all of your listeners that are parents, none of us as parents would want to say, yeah, I don't want to carry this. You deal with it. That we want their lives to be free and for them not to go through the same struggles that we did. True. So the more we sort of say, you know what? No, this ends with me. Our children are absolutely more free. They don't go down the same, neural highway that's been sinking us every time. So it's really powerful work from that respect.
Wow, that is extremely empowering and powerful. And then my other question is, so for the individuals that are listening to the show, they might have already had their children. Most of the women could be in their 40s, 50s, and 60s, where their family rearing is done. But I also understand that this work can still be transferable to the children, and it ends with us energetically. Am I understanding that correct? Am I making the right assumptions?
Absolutely. And I think, I hear that from parents who think, oh my gosh, my son is 25. Geez, I did this or this, I wish I could go back, or I wish I knew that then. And the truth is, it's never too late. As we get rid of that proverbial backpack, we show up in these relationships with our adult children very, very differently. And that significant shift that we have is shared with them, because we do have the same DNA. It is shared with even our grandchildren. So remember, it's 2 generations back. So you are absolutely right.
Wow. So that's really powerful. And a lot of the individuals, we so relieved to find out that it's okay. Because sometimes when we were younger, we had children, we did the best we could with the knowledge we had at that time. And
Of
that
course.
knowledge could have been faulty compared to what we know now.
Well, we're always evolving. And so it's
Yes.
just great to know that we can always repair and, go back to this in a much better and connected way.
Exactly. So can you tell us a little bit on how can our family history affect us as we create a business or continue with entrepreneurship?
Exactly. Now, that's a big and powerful question. So many of your listeners, I imagine, are entrepreneurs. And so we've got
Yes.
that natural sort of deep dive into what's important to us. And we want to get clear on, what is that invisible force running me from behind the scenes? Because there's a lot at stake. And I think the first thing to bring forward is it's well known, we inherit physical traits from our family, the nose like grandpa or the hair color like mom, but it's much less known how much we inherit emotionally. So when we look at the DNA that's shared, can you believe it's over 98% that is the emotional elements? Less than 2% is the hair color, the nose shape, that kind of thing. And so it's huge impact about what we carry. And I think what I notice a lot is that these money patterns, they're multi-generational until somebody has the courage to say, no, I'm not going to lose everything like grandpa did, or I'm not going to fall into habits of gambling or, the highs and then the lows. I don't want to live that way. So this work is different in the way that it gets curious around, whose debt are you carrying or whose debt are you trying to repay? And so we begin to look at things like that. We begin to maybe even take some of the weight off of how we contextualize failure. So I'll give you a few stories and examples because sometimes that's the best way to explain it.
Yes.
I worked with this gentleman who was a consultant, and he was so overwhelmed with the shame of feeling like he failed. So he was 47 and he was, right above that place of having to claim bankruptcy. And so he was sharing with me all the feelings that he was having and how it was affecting his family. And any one of us who have been in such a dire strait understand the intensity of that. So instead of going down the emotional road of where he was at, I was listening very carefully to the words he was choosing to describe it, because that leads me directly where we need to work. So there was a lot of charge around the word shame and failure. So when I asked him about his family history, his father had lost everything at the very same age.
Wow.
So what I notice is, we call it in my work, something called the ancestral alarm clock. We see this history kind of go round and round over and over again. So in an instant, he was able to say, oh my gosh, in a way, this was the family fate. I was following. There was no other way. This was, a lot of us have this unconscious loyalty that says, who am I to do better than my dad? And so we come up against the same pitfalls unless we have the awareness and we can integrate them and clear them. So after that session, he could move away from the story of, I am a failure. I let my family down. The recognition was, I'm being sure not to let my dad be the bad guy alone. And there was a different way that he could go back into what he wanted to rebuild and recreate. So not to say that it would erase the bankruptcy, but what it could give him was his confidence back to rebuild. He was very talented at his work. He was all heart. But as we know as entrepreneurs, if the confidence isn't there, we just don't have it, that momentum to kind of get back up. And so, that was just remarkable.
Wow.
Is there the time to share one more story, or would you like to?
We have enough time for one more story, and then we're going to be talking about your incredible Be Good to Yourself audio that you have available for our audience.
Great. So this story was about a very successful entrepreneur. And I had known of her reputation. I thought, I wonder what we'll be working with. So she comes in and she surprised me. You know, she talked about she had over $400,000 in her savings account, something we would all look forward to. You know, she had built a business where I couldn't imagine what she could do to, you know, stop that momentum. It looked as if everything was really, really well. She talked about her healthy, happy relationship. But then she started to talk about these dreams and these thoughts that didn't match her current reality, which was waking up in a cold sweat, being like a bag lady, being on the street, having no home. And this was a recurring nightmare. It would happen at least once a week. So she lived with this interior fear that somehow the rug would be pulled right out from under her and she would just have no resources at all. So I got to thinking, geez, you know, that's nothing to what she's told me is her reality, what I observe in her. So, you know, what could this be about? And so I started to ask some family history questions. Luci, it turns out that she was just a 1.5 years old and her parents had to move to a different country to find work. So she was, you know, raised and cared for by her grandparents. You know, they loved her. It was lovely, but it wasn't her parents. And they were gone for a little over a year. So to a tiny little person, a little over a year might as well be alive. You wake up from a nap, you wake up the next day, where are mom and dad? So it actually had nothing to do with how much money she had saved or how much money she was earning or how well her business was doing. It had much more about this feeling of at any moment I could lose everything, which is that child's unintegrated fear or feeling that was still lodged in her body. And so when we began to do the work on that very piece, everything opened up and changed from that place. So I think a lot of times as entrepreneurs, we think, okay, I got to get out there and work harder and network more and, you know, do more. But a lot of the times we can just, you know, spin our wheels if we're kind of bumping up against this deeper piece that doesn't allow us to break through that glass ceiling that you mentioned earlier. That's a great analogy.
Yes, that's true. Wow. And so sometimes the history isn't quite repeating itself, but the feeling that everything's going to be taken away from you, that can keep you constantly on an adrenaline rush and keeping your adrenal glands going and going and going. And so you're always trying to stockpile stuff.
Exactly. You're right. It often doesn't look exactly the same. And so that's what I really appreciate about my years of training. It's like tracking the theme, tracking where we connect the dots to begin to find that really quick and deep resolution. And I think it really does. It leaves that charge in that body. So for her, you could imagine the stress of, you know, spending on a course that would, you know, assist her in the next level, or even just going on a vacation. There was so much fear about the not enough, even though anyone that would look into her bank account, they would go, oh my gosh, you know, go to Hawaii, enjoy yourself. But it just wasn't possible for her until she did this work.
Wow. That makes a lot of sense. So, Johanna, I would love to have you go on and on and on to giving us more examples and helping the individuals to heal forward. But you can do something even better by giving them your free gift so that they will be able to continue to get to know you better and be able to move forward. Could you tell us a little bit about your guided visualization?
Absolutely. So as an entrepreneur myself, and I was thinking much of your audience also is, our common pattern is to go, go, go and do and give to our clients. And, you know, none of us can do that from an empty cup. So this guided imagery is all about giving to yourself. I mean, the title is even Be Good to Yourself. The inspiration came to me with an aromatherapy bath. And so maybe your clients want to set time aside to do just that, or even just listen before they go to bed. What's great about this imagery is even if you fall asleep, your subconscious mind is taking it all in, and you'll wake up more refreshed and, ready to go back into your day. So it's just a nice little gift to replenish the entrepreneur who's always giving and always doing.
Wow. And the gift is called Be Good to Yourself. It's an audio gift. It's a guided visualization. And the individuals can get that at your website, which is johannalynn.ca/be-good-to-yourself. So if you missed that, please make sure you look at the episode. It's in the notes below. So, Johanna, this has been incredible. And
Thank
I learned so much. So thank you.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be here with you. I've found your show and I've tuned in and I've learned so much from you as well. So it's a true pleasure to be here.
Fabulous. So I want to thank my audience for listening to the Wealthy Wednesday show. Thank you for going to our Facebook page at facebook.com/Wealthy Wednesday show. Thank you for liking our page. And thank you for the comments that you have left that keeps me going, creating these shows week after week after week. If you would like to contact me, if you are looking for a mystical experience so that you can tap into bringing your soul gifts into the world, or maybe you just want to know what your soul purpose and your soul gifts are, you can get a hold of me at my website, and that's lucimcmonagle.com. And I'll spell that for you, lucimcmonagle.com. I'm looking forward to hearing from you, and I'm looking forward to having you listen to my next episode. If you're listening to us on the YouTube channel, please make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the episodes. Until next time, abundant blessings. Welcome to the Wealthy Wednesday show. I am your host, Luci McMonagle. Women are recreating the rules for business, leadership, money, and they are changing the world in the process. Each week, join me for empowering messages and interviews that will inspire, motivate, and transform you. Giving a special shout out to Gordon Weary for creating the custom music that you are listening to now. Now, let's get started.